The road through the twilight forest was quiet, save for the soft whisper of leaves brushing against each other. Lady Seraphine rode alone, her black cloak wrapped tightly around her shoulders, the silver lantern at her side casting trembling shadows on the winding path. She had never been to this part of the kingdom before, yet she trusted the directions given by the messenger. Tonight, she was to meet her future husband, a prince from a neighboring land. And, though nerves stirred in her chest, she clung to a thin thread of hope that this union might bring peace between their kingdoms. The moon hung low, silver and full, painting the forest in a pale, eerie glow. Every so often, a distant howl echoed through the trees, and Seraphine shivered. Not just from cold, but from the strange feeling that she was being watched. She tightened her grip on the reins of her horse, urging it forward. The castle she expected to see at the end of the path never appeared. Instead, a shadow rose among the fog, jagged towers reaching like claws into the sky. Seraphine slowed, her heart tightening in confusion and fear. This was not the castle she had been told about. The walls were older, covered in ivy that crawled like veins over gray stone. A chill ran down her spine. Something about the place felt alive, as if it were watching her approach. Her horse whinnied nervously, and she patted its neck to calm it. But her own hands trembled. A small figure appeared at the gate, almost silent against the fog. A little girl, pale as moonlight, with hair as black as shadows, stepped forward. Her eyes shimmered unnaturally bright, and she studied Seraphine with an unsettling intensity. "The moon finally sent you," the girl whispered, her voice barely louder than the wind through the leaves. Seraphine blinked. I am Seraphine. You are." The girl tilted her head, studying her again. "I am Lise. Come. You are expected." Even as Seraphine hesitated, the gate creaked open as if by its own will, and the castle swallowed her whole. The interior was dim, lit by candles that burned with steady, calm flames. Shadows danced along the stone walls, and the air carried a faint scent of something ancient, something that smelled of secrets long kept. "Who expects me?" Seraphine asked, as she followed Lise through narrow corridors. "You will know soon enough," Lise said, her voice soft but commanding. "Do not be afraid. He will come." Seraphine had no choice but to obey, for there was a subtle authority in the little girl's gaze. They reached a large chamber, its high windows letting in slivers of moonlight that cut across the floor like silver swords. At the far end, a figure waited. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in dark clothing that seemed to drink in the light around him. His hair was black, his eyes like polished onyx, and his presence alone seemed to still the air. Seraphine felt a strange pull toward him, equal parts fear and fascination. She realized at once that he was nothing like the man she expected to marry. "I am Kale," he said, his voice low, smooth, and slightly roughened by disuse of kindness. "And you?" I was sent to wed Prince Eldrick," Seraphine stammered. "But perhaps there has been a mistake." Kale studied her, his expression unreadable. "Perhaps. Or perhaps the moon has its own plans." The little girl, Lise, stepped closer to Kale. "The moon chose her," she said. "She is here for more than marriage. She is here for you." Seraphine's heart raced. She did not understand the meaning of the girl's words, but she could not deny the pull she felt toward Kale. Even in the shadows, even in this strange and wrong castle, something about him made her feel seen. Before she could speak further, a low growl echoed through the chamber. The candles flickered violently, and shadows stretched and moved as if alive. From the darkness beyond the doors, a pack of spectral wolves appeared, their eyes glowing like embers, their bodies half-formed and shifting in the shadows. They circled the room, hungry and silent, their breath cold and heavy. Kale's eyes narrowed, and a flicker of something unreadable passed over his face. He stepped forward, and the shadows seemed to bend away from him. "Stay behind me," he said, his voice firm, but not cruel. Seraphine's hands clenched instinctively. Though fear threatened to root her to the spot, she found herself stepping closer, drawn to him, despite the danger. Kale raised a hand, and the shadows recoiled, his presence alone radiating authority. The wolves hissed and lunged, but Kale moved like water, agile and precise. With every movement, Seraphine felt a strange, growing admiration and perhaps something deeper. When the last wolf vanished into smoke and shadow, the castle fell silent again. Seraphine's heart pounded, not just from fear, but from the intensity of the moment. Kale's eyes softened slightly, and for the first time, she saw a hint of the man beneath the dark mask. "You have courage," Kale said quietly. "Few would have stayed. Most would have run." I did not want to leave you," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. The words felt dangerous, as if saying them aloud could shatter the fragile connection forming between them. Kale's expression was unreadable, but he did not step away. Instead, he gestured for her to sit at a stone bench nearby. "The night is not yet over. You must understand this castle." Seraphine sank onto the bench, feeling the cold stone against her skin. She glanced at Lys, who smiled faintly, a secretive curve of her lips. "The moon has chosen well," Lys said. "She will help him see the light in the darkness, and he will help her survive the night." Hours passed as Kael guided Seraphine through the castle. Hidden hallways, chambers full of ancient relics, and walls inscribed with long-forgotten runes. Every corner told a story. Every shadow whispered a warning. Yet Seraphine felt an unexpected fascination, as if each secret the castle held was meant for her eyes alone. By the time they returned to the main hall, the first hints of dawn brushed against the horizon. Kael stood near a window, silent, his expression thoughtful. Seraphine approached, and for a fleeting moment, she wondered if she had stumbled into destiny itself. Suddenly, a tremor shook the floor. The wind howled through the castle, stronger now, carrying a scent of smoke and iron. From the hallways emerged more spectral forms, shadows of those who had once belonged to Kael's lineage, now bound by an ancient curse. They moved as one, silent and determined, and their eyes glowed with unnatural hunger. Seraphine froze, her hand reaching instinctively for Kael. He turned, his face a mask of resolve. "Stay close to me," he said. "If you falter, the darkness will claim you." Her hand touched his arm, and for the first time, Kael did not pull away. The warmth of her presence was a stark contrast to the cold that clung to the castle walls. Seraphine felt her courage grow, not from strength alone, but from the bond forming between them. The shadows surged forward, closer, closer. And then, Lys appeared, standing at the doorway. She raised her small hand, and a pale light, soft as moonbeams, flowed from her fingers, creating a barrier between the living and the shadows. "The moon sent her for a reason," Lys said. "She belongs here. Fight, and do not falter." Kael's eyes met Seraphine's, and for a moment, the world narrowed to just the two of them. She saw not just fear or darkness in him, but longing, loss, and a hint of something that could one day be love. "Together," she whispered. "Together," he replied, and in that instant, the night itself seemed to hold its breath. The shadows advanced again, teeth glinting in the dim light, but Seraphine did not retreat. She stood beside Kael, trembling yet resolute. The castle's stones seemed to hum with anticipation, and even in the face of ancient darkness, she felt a strange sense of rightness. Somehow, she had been sent to the wrong castle, but perhaps the moon had been right all along. And then, as the spectral forms lunged, her hand brushed against Kael's. In that touch, she felt a spark of trust, of destiny, and of a bond that might change everything. The fight for the castle, and perhaps for their hearts, was only beginning. The castle was alive with a strange, heavy silence after the attack of the spectral wolves. Shadows clung to every corner, and the cold stone walls seemed to breathe along with the whispers of the night. Lady Seraphine's heart still raced, her hands trembling slightly from the adrenaline. Yet, alongside the fear, there was something else. A quiet curiosity about the castle, about its master, Lord Kael, and the little vampire girl, Lys, whose pale eyes seemed to see everything before it happened. Kael led Seraphine down a narrow hallway, the flickering candlelight revealing tapestries that told stories of kings and warriors long forgotten. He moved with a grace that was almost unnatural, like a shadow himself. And yet, despite his dark presence, Seraphine felt drawn to him. Every glance he gave her seemed weighted with meaning, though she could never fully tell what that meaning was. "You are brave," Kael said, his voice low, almost a rumble. "Few would stand when the shadows come. Most would flee. I could not leave you alone," Seraphine replied, her voice soft. She felt her cheeks warm under the intensity of his gaze. "Not when danger is so close." Kael's eyes narrowed, as if weighing her words carefully. "You do not yet understand this castle. Or me," he said. His tone was not unkind, but firm, carrying the weight of centuries of loneliness. "Here, darkness is not just outside. It is inside, in the walls, in the air, and in me." Seraphine looked up at him, feeling a mixture of fear and fascination. There was a sadness in Kael that pulled at her heart, a longing hidden behind layers of coldness and command. She wanted to reach out to him, to touch that pain and offer solace, but she knew she must tread carefully. Before she could speak further, Lys appeared at the end of the hall, floating almost silently, her small figure glowing faintly in the dim light. "The castle tests him," she said, her voice delicate but firm. "He will not let you see everything yet, but he trusts you more than he knows." "Why me?" Seraphine asked, genuinely confused. "Why am I here?" Lys tilted her head, as if weighing the question. "The moon chose you. You were meant to come, though not for the reason you think. Kael has been trapped by a curse for centuries. You are not just a bride, you are a key. The key to his heart, to his freedom, and perhaps to the survival of this place." Seraphine's chest tightened. She did not fully understand the weight of Lys's words, but she felt their truth in the quiet pull she sensed toward Kael. Her hand brushed against his sleeve as she walked beside him, and though he did not react outwardly, she felt the subtle shift of his attention. The evening passed as Kael guided Seraphine through the castle's hidden chambers and secret gardens. Moonlight spilled through high windows, casting the courtyards in silver shadows. Statues of forgotten gods and kings lined the gardens, their stony eyes seeming to watch them as they moved. Each chamber they entered whispered of history, of loneliness, and of pain. "Why are these rooms hidden?" Seraphine asked, her fingers brushing over the carvings in the stone. "They are part of me," Kael said, his voice softer now, almost a confession. "Part of my curse, my mistakes, my regrets. They are not meant for strangers. Yet you are not a stranger." Seraphine's heart ached at the vulnerability in his tone. For the first time, she felt that beneath the darkness and mystery, Kael was a man who longed for connection, for trust, for someone to see him as he truly was. She reached out, placing a tentative hand on his arm. "You do not have to face this alone," she whispered. Kael's gaze fell on her hand, and for a moment, the shadows around him seemed to deepen, almost as if testing her courage. Then, slowly, he allowed himself to lean just a fraction closer, acknowledging her presence in a way he had not done with anyone for centuries. The air between them was charged with unspoken emotion, fear, fascination, and the beginnings of longing. As they explored the castle together, strange events began to unfold. Doors opened on their own, whispers echoed in empty halls, and shadows shifted unnaturally along the walls. Lys followed silently, guiding them, occasionally pausing to glance at the moon through the high windows. "Do you feel it?" Lys asked quietly. "The shadows are stronger tonight. They sense the bond forming between you." Seraphine nodded. "I feel it. And I feel drawn to him. I do not understand why, but I cannot ignore it." Kale's eyes flickered at her words. A mixture of surprise and something deeper. Perhaps fear. Perhaps hope. "Be careful," he said. "The castle does not forgive mistakes. And neither do the shadows." Night deepened, and the moon climbed high, bathing the castle in its silver glow. The little vampire girl led them to the high tower, where the air was colder and the wind howled like distant cries. From this height, Seraphine could see the entire kingdom spread below, a dark sea of forests and hills. The beauty was eerie, almost otherworldly, and it filled her with both awe and unease. "Why are you helping me?" Seraphine asked Lys, her voice low. "Why protect me?" Lys looked down at her, her small face solemn. "Because you are meant to change him. Because only together can the curse be broken. You must be brave, Seraphine. Not just for yourself, but for him and for the castle." The wind whipped through the tower, carrying a faint scent of roses and iron. Seraphine shivered, drawing her cloak tighter around her. Kale stepped closer, offering a hand, a silent invitation. She took it without hesitation, and the warmth of his touch sent an unexpected thrill through her. "You are far braver than most," Kyle said, his voice barely above a whisper. "And perhaps, in time, you will teach me what it means to feel alive again." Seraphine felt her chest tighten at his words. She wanted to tell him that she already saw something human in him, something worth saving. Yet the shadows around them reminded her that danger was never far, and trust was a fragile thing in this place. Suddenly, a chilling wind swept through the tower, extinguishing the candles. The moonlight flickered, and shadows surged along the walls, coalescing into the forms of the spirits that haunted Kale's lineage. Their eyes glowed with anger, their mouths opening in silent, hungry howls. Kale moved in front of Seraphine, his presence commanding and protective. "Stay close," he ordered. "They will test you. Do not falter." Seraphine's hand gripped his sleeve. "I won't," she said, her voice steady despite the fear twisting in her stomach. The shadows advanced, and Kale stepped forward, his movements precise, almost like a dance. He did not strike them with weapons, yet they recoiled from him, as if his very presence was a force they could not touch. Seraphine watched in awe, realizing that this man, this dark, brooding figure, was more than just a prince of shadows. He was a guardian of something older, something tied to the moon, to Lys, and now, to her. Lys raised her hands, and pale light poured from her fingertips, weaving between Seraphine and Kale, forming a protective barrier. "The bond must hold," Lys said. "You are not alone. Trust him. Trust yourselves." For the first time, Seraphine felt the full weight of her purpose. She was no longer just a bride lost on a journey. She was part of something greater, something ancient and powerful. Her courage and her heart were intertwined with Kale's fate. And perhaps, the fate of the castle itself. The shadows recoiled, then surged again, testing the strength of their bond. Seraphine felt Kale's hand tighten around hers, and in that simple gesture, she found courage she did not know she had. Together, they faced the darkness, not just with strength, but with trust, with connection, and with the strange spark of emotion growing between them. And as the night stretched on, the moon hung high above, casting a pale light over the castle, and the pair standing against the shadows. Seraphine realized that the wrong castle might have been the right place after all. Here, with Kale and Lys, she was discovering not only courage, but a strange, unspoken longing, one that could not be denied, one that was as old and inevitable as the moon itself. The castle was quiet now. But the quiet was heavy, full of anticipation. The shadows that had tested Seraphine and Kale in the night were gone, but not truly defeated. Their eyes glimmered in memory, reminders that darkness lingered in the corners of the ancient fortress. Seraphine stood at the foot of the grand staircase, her hands clasped together, and her heart beating with both fear and determination. Kale's presence beside her was steady, a dark anchor in the storm of unknown dangers. His eyes, usually cold and unreadable, softened as he looked at her. "The night is not yet over," he said. "What comes next will test us more than anything before. The shadows you saw are only the beginning." Seraphine nodded, drawing strength from his words. She had already faced the wolves, the spirits, and the strange, otherworldly dangers of this castle. She was no longer the nervous bride lost in a wrong place. She was part of something greater, something tied to KL and to the castle itself. Lise appeared suddenly, her small form gliding silently through the air, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "It is time," she said. "The moon has brought you here. And now the truth must be revealed. Kale's curse is older than the kingdom itself, born from betrayal, sorrow, and pride. You, Seraphine, are the key to breaking it." Seraphine's breath caught. "A key? How can I?" "You have a heart that is not afraid to trust," Lise interrupted, her voice steady. "You can see him, not just the darkness he carries, but the man beneath. That is what the curse cannot withstand: courage, love, and belief." Kyle remained silent, watching her, the shadows of his past flickering in his eyes. For centuries, he had carried the burden of his family's mistakes, the weight of isolation, and the curse that tied him to the castle. He had never let anyone come close, not for fear of betrayal, but because he had stopped believing in hope. Now, standing beside Seraphine, he felt a spark he had thought lost forever. "The curse," Kale murmured, his voice low. "It is bound to my bloodline, to the darkness that has haunted every lord of this castle. To break it, I must face what I fear most. I must face myself." Seraphine reached for his hand again. "Then we face it together," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "I will not leave you. Not now, not ever. You are not alone." For a moment, Kale's mask of control cracked. The vulnerability in her words, the warmth of her touch, stirred something in him that had long been buried. He took her hand, gripping it tightly, as if drawing strength from her courage. Lise led them to the highest tower of the castle, where the moonlight poured down like silver fire. The wind whipped around them, carrying with it the faint scent of roses and cold stone. The walls here were inscribed with runes older than any living memory, runes that hummed with power and whispered of destiny. "The spirits of your ancestors will appear," Lys warned Kael. "They will demand to see if the curse can be broken. Only together can you stand before them." Kael nodded, his jaw tight. "I will not fail," he said. "Not for the moon, not for the castle, but for Seraphine, for the first time in centuries thinking of someone other than himself." The air grew colder, and shadows began to swirl at the edges of the tower. Ghostly figures emerged, the ancestors of Kael's bloodline. They were pale, yet terrifyingly real, their eyes like coals, burning with accusation. Their forms twisted, and a low, eerie chant filled the air. Seraphine's grip on Kael's hand tightened. She felt the fear and power radiating from the spirits, but she also felt the strength in their connection, the bond they had built through the night, through danger and trust. "You are not alone," she whispered again. "Look at me. See me. See who you truly are." Kael took a deep breath and stepped forward, placing himself between the spirits and Seraphine. "I am Kael," he said, his voice steady and strong despite the tremor in his chest. I have carried this curse for centuries. I have been afraid. I have been alone. I have failed. But I choose now to face what I am, and I choose to trust. The spirits circled, their whispers rising and falling like the wind through the forest. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, a glow began to radiate from the runes on the walls, bathing the tower in pale light. The spirits wavered, their forms flickering as if unsure of their power. Seraphine felt a warmth spread through her, not just from the magic, but from the bond they shared. She stepped closer to Kale, her hand still in his. "You are not alone. We are stronger together." Kale looked at her, and for the first time, he allowed himself to feel fully, to acknowledge the warmth and light she brought into his life. The spirits shifted again, their forms beginning to dissolve, their angry eyes softening as they receded into the moonlight. The curse that had haunted Kale's bloodline for centuries began to break, piece by piece, unraveling in the presence of trust, courage, and love. Lys hovered nearby, her small figure radiant in the pale glow. "The curse has been broken. The moon's will is fulfilled. But remember, the night always watches, and the darkness never fully sleeps." Kale turned to Seraphine, his eyes shining with a mixture of relief, gratitude, and something deeper, something human and fragile that he had hidden for so long. You have saved me," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Not just from the curse, but from myself." Seraphine smiled softly. "We saved each other," she said, "and the castle, and perhaps even the night itself." For a moment, they stood together in silence, watching the first light of dawn spill over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. The shadows of the castle seemed less threatening now, the weight of centuries lifted, and a sense of peace settled over the fortress. Kale finally spoke, his voice low but steady. "The moon sent you for a reason, Seraphine. I thought I had no hope, no future, no heart left to give. But now, you have opened a door I thought would remain closed forever." Seraphine's fingers brushed his cheek, and he did not pull away. In that simple, silent touch, the bond they had forged through fear, danger, and trust became undeniable. The castle had tested them, the shadows had challenged them, and they had faced everything together. "You are not alone anymore," Seraphine said, her voice soft, almost a whisper. "And you never will be." Kale took a deep breath, letting the tension drain from his shoulders. "Then we begin again," he said, his hand finding hers. "Together, we face whatever comes next. The night, the castle, even the moon itself." From the shadows of the tower, Lys watched, a faint smile on her lips. "The moon chose wisely," she whispered, to no one in particular. "The bride has brought the light back to the darkness." As the sun rose higher, spilling warmth into the castle's stone halls, Seraphine and Kyle stood together, hands clasped, hearts beating as one. The trials of the night had passed, but their journey was only beginning. The castle still held mysteries, whispers of past and future, but they would face them together, stronger for what they had endured. And in that quiet, sacred moment, Seraphine realized that being sent to the wrong castle had not been a mistake. It had been destiny. The moon had guided her here, to Kale, to the castle, and to the realization that even in darkness, love could heal, redeem, and illuminate the path forward. The castle was no longer a place of fear. It was a place of hope, of courage, and of a bond that not even centuries of shadows could destroy. And though the moon still watched, casting its silver light over the towers and forests, Seraphine knew they had triumphed not just over the curse, but over the fear that had haunted both their hearts for so long. Together, They turned from the tower, ready to face the world outside, ready to discover the life they could build beyond shadows and whispers. The moon had sent her, as Lys had said, and in its pale, steady light, they finally understood the power of trust, courage, and love.